right, welcome. Hope you all are having a good night. Friday night. Dark things tonight. Dark things. But hey, we talk about dark things a lot. Nothing out of the ordinary for this crowd. I was doing all kinds of stuff. You don't know what I'm up to. Trying to judge me. Why you try to judge me? You can't judge me. In the words of Tupac, only God could judge me. In the words of Azalea Banks, only God could judge me. All right, so where to begin? I want to talk about a lot of different things tonight. New information, details turning up. A lot of the research that I'm doing. I may just have to write a book about the serial killers and all this kind of stuff. I mean, there's just too much information. There's too much crazy stuff going on that, and yes, a lot of this crime connects together. I think that's the thing that is the most shocking. But when if you study elite criminality, it's not shocking. It makes perfect sense, right? That criminal networks are connected more often than not. Not always. But it's like an octopus. It's like a spider's web kind of thing, right? And you can support the stream, by the way, via the super chats there. You can ask questions. Now, we did a Rosemary's Baby breakdown before, but I wanted to redo it because certain words were used and the algorithm decided that it was too insensitive for the sensitive ears over here. And so it got put into basically just hidden. And then adult over 18 or whatever. So I've been wanting to redo the Rosemary's Baby stream for a long time. So we're going to do that. But we're also going to tie it into a lot of the stuff that I've been researching in the past, 3 or 4 weeks. Because again, it's tying back into new details, things that emerge with the serial killers, with organized crime, and with the global trafficking networks and cults. And I think, again, that's the thing that is probably the most surprising, that people would have a hard time believing, is that organized crime, rackets, black markets are part of the system. Right? They're not fighting the system. They're part of the system, and they're used by higher level people. And what's emerging for me in terms of a lot of the serial killers is that they're part of cults, they're part of networks, and cults are useful to really Machiavellian people. That's not to say that there aren't true believers. That's not to say there aren't high up true believers. There are. But think about the value of a stable of loons, right? A stable of gibbering, frothing spurgopaths. They're very useful. And I started thinking about the fake flag events, right? We know that goes on with entrapment. We know that goes on with the patsies there. Do you think that a stable of spurgopaths isn't also useful? Of course it is. And as I watched, yes, I did finally get to the Sons of Sam documentary, which we'll be reviewing that in the part 2 of the Dahmer installment that I just covered. And there is a connection, as we've seen, between now. I've connected Savile process to Son of Sam to Manson via others connects to other cults. We have one killer alleging a connection between all of them, but of course we can't always believe the testimony of the killers and the creeps because they don't always tell the truth. But there is at least some allegations of that. So if you've got Charles Manson writing a chapter, really, or what do you call it, an essay basically on death for the Process Church magazine, meanwhile Jimmy Savile being interviewed by the Process Church magazine, then there's a direct connect via process between these two entities. And then, of course, probably many of you know, there is then the connection between Manson and the Sons of Sam via process. Robert de Grimston and that brood of creeps. And again, more and more of this stuff is starting to come out now. I guess they just don't care. It's not as big of a deal because as time goes by, it's kind of like, well, decades have gone by. They don't really care. I mean, stuff that was edgy, 20, 30 years ago is like New York Times level stuff, right? Oh, yeah, now we can tell you that Sam Giancana, CIA, right, were working together and the mafia was connected to the CIA, right? These are like mainline books, right? Which was edgy stuff 20, 30 years ago. When was Ashman's book written? Probably 70s, I'm guessing. But there was quite a spate of revealing books that came out in the 70s. Yeah, John Marx's books, the Charles Ashman book. This is 1975. And, I mean, now, this is New York Times, Kirkus Review, public information, because they just don't care, right? This was 2019. So this just came out, Mafia Spies. Now, other books that are going to be relevant here, I've read a lot of books on cults over the years, obviously, many, many, many books. This is a rare book that is now out of print, but it does make a lot of connections, and that's Blood on the Altar by Craig Heimbicher. So, if you can get your hands on this book, it's worth getting. Maybe, I don't think it's in print, but you could happen upon a copy on Amazon, but last I checked, it was going for $200, $300. So there's a lot of connections and insights in that book as well. And Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare also made use of Mccartney. I think Blood on the Altar makes use of Mccartney as well. And of course, if you don't know, the Netflix documentary Sons of Sam covers Mccartney, at least in the first 3 installments in the book Ultimate Evil. Now, the first 2 installments, all the way up into 2.5, are good, and you're like, yeah, they're really showing what's going on here. And then they turn around and try to do this gaslight whitewash, where it's like they show all of this evidence of a satanic cult, and then they just try to turn around and be like, oh, but not really. There's not really evidence for that. It's like, dude, you just showed me like 3 hours of evidence. What are you talking about? And they're like, well, Roy Radin was killed because of drugs. So as if there's something mutually exclusive about a cult and drugs. Oh, he was killed because of drugs, so see, it's not a cult. I mean, it can be both, dummy. Just dumb stuff, right? But it's worth watching. I mean, I'm not going to say it's bad. It's well made. It's just that you start to feel like it's kind of whitewashing as you get into the end of the 3rd episode of Sons of Sam. And they don't even probe all kinds of other incidents that are similar in nature. Many, many other cults. Remember, some of what we're going to talk about tonight relates to Australia. Go watch this old 60 Minutes treatment here that I put in earlier. And we have a story from 1989 about ritual abuse cults in Australia. And there was another Australian CBS 60 Minutes that I think has been removed. It was up maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and it was about all the PEDO Parliament scandals. Yes, the PEDO in Australian Parliament scandals. That was a big, even 60 Minutes Australia, big report. The YouTube video had millions of views, and now it doesn't exist. But I assure you it exists. I watched the whole thing. But keep that in mind, and also keep in mind when I show you this, which I've shared many times, the famous HBO documentary on MPD-DID. And in all of those instances, the people with MPD-DID allege ritual abuse. I don't think that's accidental. I've been going deep into stories about, well, we did Savile, right? We did a deep dive into about I read a 30-page report with about 100 footnotes on all of the Savile stuff. Some of that I covered with Sean Atwood, which will be on his channel next week. And of course, if you want that now, you go to Jay's Analysis and you subscribe for the part 2 where we did this Savile deep dive. And if you saw that as a subscriber, then you know that I posited that it looks like Savile is not just involved in procuring and blackmailing, but it's a cult. It's blackmailing, procuring, and it's also contract killing. So he functions as one of these kind of go-between node people. And they usually have a coven around them. That appears to be the case with Savile in terms of Myra Hindley, Ian Bradley, and Peter Sutcliffe. A lot of people allege that. We have the flights of Savile's front thing called Dream Flight, where they would fly kids to Disneyland and abuse them. Yes, go look that up. We have, Savile in his ritual garb, and then the indications that Savile was protected or even part of British intelligence. So, I mean, that all of that is out there in the footnotes if you pay attention. And so he's clearly functioning as somebody with accomplices. And by the way, he was a suspect as a serial killer, along with Sutcliffe for a long time, but he was protected. So I go into all that detail. I'm not going to go into those details now because that's for the paid subscribers if you listen to Jay's Analysis. But what do we know is the actual profile that we always see. The actual profile is accomplices, satanic philosophy and network, filming it, the events. They're well connected in some way. Perhaps they know high-level politicians, or perhaps they work locally with police, or perhaps they had time with military training, perhaps as a killer, Phoenix program type stuff. And then, of course, we always have the trauma DID and oftentimes drug stuff. And organized crime connections often too, not in every case, but often. So that's the real profile of the so-called serial killer, is what I just told you, not what you hear in the mainstream narratives. And so it's just, again, if you've been around our circles, right? If you follow my stuff, if you read Dave McGowan, if you read Maury Terry over the years, you know that people, if you listen even to Opperman report, this the Opperman, Ed Opperman report, then you already knew what was going on. And now you're watching the mainstream people figure out stuff that we conspiracy people said for 10, 15, 20 years or more. And a lot of webs and things that seemed disconnected are actually showing up as far more connected than we thought. Now, as I was asked yesterday on a podcast, does that mean that everybody's part of a single cult? No, but there can be hierarchies. There can be disconnected cults that are run at a higher level. And I think with Manson, what we see with people in the Manson circles being the hitman for Roy Radin, and Roy Radin being directly connected to the Berkowitz circles, then now we have a Hollywood connection. Now we have Berkowitz-Manson connection via process and Scientology. Because Process is an offshoot of Scientology, if you don't know. Now, and then we have the over the pond connection to Savile as well. And what we're getting there, the picture is that rather these networks are connected. Okay, this is not just random shit that goes down. That's what the normies think. Normies think that this stuff just happens, right? Or it just doesn't even happen, right? And, you know, we covered a few books on this over the years directly. Last year we did Kerth Barker's book, Cannibalism, Blood Drinking, High Adept Satanism. Kerth Barker, who is one of the victims that claims to have been raised in this stuff. Right now, I've got a bunch of books of victims. I'm not saying that everything victims claim is true or proof per se. It's just testimony, right? It's not definitive proof. It's testimony. In the same way as, you know, the Mccartney trial has testimony from all these kids claiming things, right? And I think the Mccartney thing was legitimately a cult. And I think that was satanic abuse, right? I mean, we got the release of the FBI documents last year on the finders. So there's plenty of precedent for this. That's the crazy part, is people act like this is outlandish and crazy. I mean, there's tons of cases. What are you talking about? I mean, you have no idea what you're talking about. Or you're just gaslighting and lying, right? People are cowardly. Like, they don't know, they can't face up to truth, right? But the thing about Kerth's book, which we covered, was that he actually wrote this account in 2014. So he was probably writing this in 2013, published it in 2014. And it's way ahead of its time in terms of what he said the culture would be accepting right now. So although I was initially skeptical of his book, when I read it, I was like, wow, he was saying all the stuff that we're seeing roll out in this stupid ass boomer chair. So it's like it's talking to me the whole time. It's fussing at it. Boomer fuss. Just to kind of sum up with a few of the points, he talks about being raised with family members that kind of put him into this generational cult stuff. He was raised to be a part of this. It had a direct connection to people high up in the United Nations. Again, none of this is unbelievable, right? I mean, we know about Lucis Trust. We know about Lucifer Publishing. He alleges that a lot of the people who are higher level, right, above like your local, idiot, teen level, rebel, edgy, Anton LaVey Satanists, right? He alleges that a lot of the higher, wealthier nobility, black nobility, barons, these kinds of people, not joking, by the way, that they are into more of a Luciferian thing that takes their ritual practices seriously, but that he says it operates like a business. In other words, it's organized crime, but it operates like a business, like a branch of organized crime. And then overlaps at times with the mob or other organized crime or government, right? So he talks about being taken to different things as a kid, and he talks about abuse. That's the part that sticks out, is that what he saw in his experience growing up was a lot of the things that you hear in other cases that make sense. They don't sound made up. They sound like high-level CEOs being brought into things and being compromised via cameras in these events involving abuse. Epstein. He talked about how there would be a continued push for body modification to eventually get people to be more amenable to stabbies and chips and those nano tracking things. Way ahead of its time on what they would try to do with that stuff. He talks about serial killers being used. He talks about the finders, the Mccartney case. He talks about Stanford SRI, Fabian socialism. He talks about the smart cities being like, he likens them to little rat motels that you put, you know, the rats come into the little motel, a roach motel, and then they come in and they're chipped, and in the smart cities, right, tracked and traced, you're now I can't read my notes, is why I keep pausing. I can't read what I wrote. Mass something, multinationals, I guess is what, I can't tell what that note says, but so basically he's saying that the promotion of tattoos and tattooing on a large scale, the promotion of bodily modification, machine surgery, experimentation on the homeless, is all intended to move us in the direction of the nano stuff. And he talked about elite pedos. He talked about islands where this goes on. He talks even about the consuming of humans and the blood transfusions that is now mainstream news. But, oh, that's crazy. Ha, 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 ha. People believe that this goes on. Ha, 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 ha. That's so absurd. Nihilism, the promotion of nihilism. Large-scale looting via black markets and theft is part of the scam. Ayn Rand is an example of the satanic philosophy, because you have this satanic elite basically not just setting up a breakaway civilization, but intentionally wanting to collapse the existing civilization. So, in other words, it was all kind of, all of the big picture that we've been looking at and seeing in a lot of these cases, he talked about in 2013, 2014. And by the way, not just him, blood on the altar, same type of scenario. 2005. I remember I bought this when it came out, 2005. Secret Society, Psychological Warfare, similar materials in that. And you're saying, well, I thought we were going to be talking about Rosemary's Baby. But what I'm going to show you is the overlap between Hollywood, between the movie and reality, and even the people involved in the movie. Right? I mean, I know this might be old hat to some of you, but a lot of people are new to a lot of this stuff. It's really waking people up. Their minds are being blowed, as it should be. And so I delved into his other book. He has another book detailing more of the story, more of the people that were involved and that he met, not by name, but using aliases. And I've been reading over at American Empire Exposed. Gigantic. I read about 50 pages of his chapters of his books. So I have those on order. Now, the unfortunate part of this domain is that some of the people are well-meaning, and they don't have the best filters for vetting and filtering out BS artists. So every now and then, some of these people will have on somebody that's a total bullshit artist, right? I don't think that necessarily means that everybody's testimony is necessarily false, right? But again, we're going to treat the supposed survivors as a potential witness or a potential piece of evidence or attestation, okay? They're not direct necessary proof. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm saying that from our vantage point, we just don't know for sure in each case what exactly is going on. Because in many cases, right, especially with kids who grew up with the abuse, they were drugged. So their account of things that might sound outlandish could be from the fact that they were drugged. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all a lie. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a false memory syndrome foundation, bunch of baloney, which itself was created by Satanists and convicted pedos, by the way. Martin Orn and all that. But it can be both, right? So we have to be weary of I've figured it all out type thinking, or it's all fake type. All or nothing thinking is not the way to approach these topics. Another instance, I'm a good ways into Thank you for that super chat. I'm a good ways into Kathy O'Brien's book. There appears to be some good substantial things here. I'm going to treat Kathy's account as attestation, as evidence, as allegation. Sometimes the allegations that people make are pretty outlandish. And again, that can just be, these are traumatized people, so they may be not remembering every detail or thinking, from therapy, oh, when that song was played on the radio, that was used to program me. I'm not sure about that. But I'm not saying that means that everybody's lying. So again, be nuanced in what I'm saying. The real story is always kind of down in there in all of this stuff. And we have to be careful of the fallacies. Remember, we can't do Texas sharpshooter fallacy. We can't do gambler's fallacy. We can't do correlation causation fallacy. Right? These are the biggest mistakes. That and when people just believe any idiot that pops up on the internet claiming the craziest stuff. Right? Hence why the Q-tard crap was so easy to steer people into nonsense. So take real things that came out in WikiLeaks or whatever and steer people down some road into nonsense, right? And buried in this is real stuff, you see. So when I'm reading American Empire Exposed, I'm not saying he's wrong. However, when I see him do an interview with somebody who's totally shady, right? But we're going to focus on the details because that's what we can look up and verify, what we do have access to. And what we do have access to is, look, multiple cases of stuff coming out like Nexium, Jeff Stein, McEfrey, Saville, Penn State, Sandusky, the Finders, right? Many of these cases that are in Australia, the family in Australia, not Ann Hamilton Byrne, a different thing of elite, wealthy, connected PEDO murder stuff in Australia. There's a lot of this in Australia, dude. Right? We got Dutroux, Weinstein, the Roman Catholic world and its pedo circles. Oh, and I just wrote a long report on trafficking in Eastern Europe. Now, that's something I didn't know much about. Now, I read significantly about the Dutroux affair. By the way, Pierre Patriani, the Monster of Florence, another one. The Dutroux affair connecting to satanic cults, which very few people have noticed and turned up, which we looked at. So you see what I'm getting at is that this pattern is there. It keeps emerging. It's not even hard to find if you just do a little research. And then when we see those things that are pretty objectively documentable, then when we go and we look at the firsthand testimonies, right? Kathy O'Brien, Kerth Barker, there's many more. That's when we start to realize that, oh wait, there's real stuff going on here, and there's real potential that a lot of this, much of this is connected, on a global scale. Now, the reason I was saying that is because I'd read that big report on Eastern European trafficking, Moldova, Romania, right? Czech Republic. These are the hubs in Europe for people being trafficked. We know similar things go on here down at the border. I had a friend that just told me that there was a voodoo cult busted in North Carolina. What? Right? Literally straight out of frickin' Devil's Advocate. Remember that scene in Devil's Advocate when Kinko is having to defend the voodoo people? Right? Well, this voodoo cult in North Carolina, because of new people to the region who believe in voodoo, they were trying to grab some kids, dude, for voodoo stuff. And then that's not surprising, though, when we think about Henry Lee Lucas, Otis Toole, Matamoros cult. Hello. Yeah, exactly. And yes, of course, Michael Aquino. That's an obvious one we can't forget. People say, how would this be going on? The government would know about it. Yeah, the government is in league with the cults, dummy. Who do you think's in league with MS-13? Who do you think runs and traffics drugs and weapons to the cartels? Remember Fast and Furious? Duh. What are you talking? How dumb are you? Stop being dumb. So many naive, dumb people. The government would know about it, dude. Dude, everybody would know about it if this existed. They do. It's in the news every day, dummy. You're just a coward. You're just a piece of crap, dude. I'm serious. Like, people are legitimately evil. Like, they're evil and they can't see evil. Or they're naive and they just think that everybody acts like they act or something. I don't know. But yeah, more and more what it's seeming to me is that, and by the way, the reason I mentioned Aquino, I'm sorry, was that that's the mindset of a person in high-level Army psychological warfare who's basically giving the Army's doctrine of psychological warfare in his paper, Mind War to Psy War, or Psy War to Mind War. I mean, he talks about all the stuff Brzezinski talks about. So, I mean, what are you talking about? You think that, I mean, that's who is writing the Army's doctrine of psychological warfare. Literal Satanists, creators of the Temple of Set. And he comes up in Maury Terry's book as well. But again, at that time, when that book came out in 87, 89, whatever it was, I mean, that was just too, no way people could believe that, right? Oh, this is satanic panic stuff. And by the way, people are sophisticated, right? Michael Aquino is not a stupid person. In fact, he was a very smart person. Highly sophisticated, again, super strategist when it comes to psychological warfare. Do you think he wasn't smart enough to know how to diffuse the 80s satanic panic by flooding a bunch of bunk and bullshit? Of course, they know what they're doing. Look at a book like Michelle Remembers, right? You're reading this book, it sounds like an authentic account, and then it just turns into crazy stuff, right? The end of the book has this story of her talking on a telephone to Satan or some nonsense like this, right? Something stupid like that. I read it many years ago, but so obviously it was fake, right? So what you can do is you put out the fake stuff, right? It's like put the disinfo out there. It's similar to what, the Cass Sunstein cognitive infiltration model. Just flood the alternative media with baloney and stupid conspiracies, and it makes the whole thing look dumb. That's like a basic counterintelligence operation tactic. What are we looking at right now? All this alien nonsense, right? How long? I was telling you, been sitting here for years, months, especially over and over. What do? We did Alien January, trying to tell y'all they were going to run this stupid alien psyop. And here it is. Now the Pentagon has verified the grainy, stupid-ass footage that you can't see anything but a dot, right? It confirmed. The Pentagon confirms UFOs. Barack Obama, look, aliens are real. Okay. Did you see the clip of Obama saying aliens are? We told you. I mean, this stuff is it's telegraphed, and by the way, it's obvious. After a while, all this stuff is obvious. Now, what's not that obvious, as we said, is exactly what's going on with this cult stuff. But I mean, every day I learn new things every day. I didn't know that Romania, Czech, Moldova, this is like some massive, traffic illegal hub type thing. But it is, and the patterns are the same, right? Over and over and over. And not always, but in many cases, for example, if you listen to this report, the ABC video, the 60 Minutes Australia video, of Teresa's escape from the satanic cult, the 1969 thing. Her account sounds just like Eyes Wide Shut, and it sounds just like, this is way before Eyes Wide Shut, but it sounds just like Kerth Barker's account, right? So again, there's the link to that. And what she says is, number one, I was raised in this, and it wasn't something that was directly my family. It was a related family member, right? So she talks about it being her grandmother. And in Kerth Barker's case, he says the exact same thing. It was a family friend who he suspects was brought over in some sort of operation via intelligence operation. It was a woman who came via CIA from Germany back to the U.S. Perhaps paperclip. I don't know. He says something like that, but and then his parents just like, oh yeah, go stay with her, right? And then of course that's where the abuse took place, was via this weird nanny woman. And he talks about how they all had this sort of deference and respect for these weird non-family members, and they owed money to these people. So in other words, the satanic group here and the leader, who was this sort of black nobility type person, they actually had the family in debt, and they were propping up his dad's business. So they had a lot of control via the wealth. And so you can start to see how this kind of stuff operates, right? Like they come in, they help people out with money. It's like the mafia does, right? And then you're indebted to them. And cults can do the same thing. But in both cases, there's the story of, I was taken out into the country as a kid to a big estate, looked like a damn castle, right? Literally, like Eyes Wide Shut. Ninth Gate. Don't forget Ninth Gate. And it's Ninth Gate uses one of the former Rothschild mansions, right? And then that's also the mansion that's in Batman. That's Bruce Wayne's mansion. The Beatles also did Transcendental Meditation there, by the way. But it's a different chateau that's in Eyes Wide Shut. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I get that right. It's in my first book, but I mean, that's the thing, right? And then it turns out, remember many years ago, Fritz was way ahead of the game on this too. If you read Bloodlines of the Illuminati, Fritz does a lot of goofy things nowadays, but at least in Bloodlines of the Illuminati, he was talking about that castle, right, that connected to the Dutroux affair. And a lot of people found that hard to believe, but you know, Fritz was talking about Dutroux and all that stuff even before Dave McGowan did. So this has been there for a long time. And sometimes it was kind of the weird kind of fringe people that were talking about it. And then over time they get vindicated. And there's other people, right? Fiona Barrett, is it Barnett, right? I'm not going to say, again, I don't want to be mean to anybody. I'm not saying that they're fake. I'm just saying that we have to be measured in what we take from each victim, not because the victims are lying or telling the truth, but because we don't have a way to verify every claim. So when people say things about different people's families or elites, I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying that we know this goes on, but exactly what elites are doing it. I mean, I'm not going to be surprised, right, if Bob Hope was some kind of handler, right? And we have allegations of that, but I can't prove. Right? I don't know, other than somebody saying, right? I think, doesn't Kathy O'Brien say Bob Hope? Or no, Bryce Taylor says Bob Hope, excuse me. So I think we have to go with what we can verify as first. Then we can look back at the testimonies of the Bryce Taylor, the Kathy O'Brien, the Fiona Barnett, Kerth Barker, and see what ends up being verified. And some people in this domain don't tell the truth, right? and there's scammers and con artists that come into this domain. I'm not saying the people that I listed, but I'm saying people like that one guy that was like, oh, there's going to be a tribunal of the international Belgian courts that are going to try the Vatican and the Queen of England. Remember all that bullshit, right? I mean, that was just nonsense, right? But there was a good statement by Dr. Colin Ross, who has some really good books on satanic ritual abuse. And he was saying, the way I treat it as a psychiatrist or psychologist, I forget what he is. When they come to me, the people who say these things, because he kind of specializes in that, he says, I don't automatically assume that they're lying. I don't automatically assume they're telling the truth. I just treat it as the story that they tell me, and then treat them as a person who's dealing with something, right? And anyway, in a lot of cases, we're just not going to know. We just can't ultimately totally prove what was going on. So, but we can make our best guess, and we can look back at people's accounts that match up with the facts and what comes out. If you look at this new chapter that was published about Australia at American Empire Exposed, I was reading that. And I read about the first 7 chapters of Fiona's book. There's a lot of good details, a lot of accounts of stuff that is verifiable in those chapters. She later got into things about nuclear technology, which, Kevin Anna, that's the guy that was talking about a bunch of courts and all this nonsense. But we do have verified cases, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. Because the first several chapters just talk about things that we can verify. We know that the model of like Ghislaine and Robert Maxwell, we've talked about that. If you go over to my Rockfin, I put that on Rockfin. We know about the likelihood of Bush Sr., Kissinger, those people being into that kind of stuff. Everybody knows, I think, now about Mother Teresa and her so-called charity being a human trafficking front, which, by the way, I got a lot of flack for calling out Mother Teresa a long time ago, because I had read about her close connections to that just totally creepy cult leader, John Roger. She took $10,000 from John Roger, this just ridiculous New Age Luciferian cult leader. You can go look up the interviews between them on YouTube, and there you can find the image. You can find her praying in Buddhist temples. You can find her in her Time magazine articles saying that her goal was to make a Buddhist a better Buddhist. I mean, Mother Teresa was phony. And I mean, Catholics get mad about that, but I mean, I'm sorry. That's not my fault that stuff happened, right? And again, that's contrary to what she professed to be, right? I mean, she professed to be a Catholic, a Christian. You can't do that as a traditional Catholic, right? Those things are complete renunciation and violation of what Catholicism was supposed to be, right? I mean, I'm Orthodox, but you know what I'm saying. And so then it came out right after her death. Oh, it turns out her religious order is a human trafficking operation. Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, because we're learning, right, that all of this stuff goes up to the highest levels, including the Vatican. Duh, right? Every traditional Catholic out there has known this, has figured this out a long time ago. Author William Kennedy wrote the book Lucifer's Lodge, which is about Luciferian stuff in the Roman Catholic Church. Now that book is now rare and out of print too, I think. A lot of those books I bought reading back in the 2000s. By the way, I started reading about this in 2003. Okay, so I've got shelves about this topic, right? Ritual abuse, especially in the Roman Catholic world. I've read or have basically all the books on it. So, I mean, when people come to me and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't exist," I mean, are you aware of all the Catholic priests that have been convicted of this stuff who were into Satanism? I mean, go look up. I tweet the news articles out still all the time. What are you talking about? And people are surprised that Francis is completely global New World Order promoter number one. It's not surprising. Because again, I mean, even if you just knew the Vatican bank scandals that tied into organized crime, the mafia, P2, Bishop Marcinkus, even if you just knew the Vatican bank scandals, you would know how that works, that whole corrupt thing. It's just a giant mafia. That's all it is. Under the guise of a church. Again, now that doesn't mean that every Catholic is a bad person. I'm not saying that. I was sincere Catholic for a long time. But the organization and the people that run that and that decide who gets what posts, what positions, they are wicked. They are corrupt. Really wicked. And by the way, there's same corruption in the Orthodox Church too. I'm not saying, and the Protestant world, right? Because this fundamental demonic corruption is everywhere. It's in every country. That's what we're talking about here, right? There's networks. And one thing that she talks about here that I think is correct, and this is not from Fiona. This is actually from the famous detective Joe Rothstein, who's kind of the famous detective on this. By the way, I think you can hear his interview. I think Alex has interviewed him in the past, but he's also, you can listen to his interviews on Opperman Report. Opperman has multiple interviews with Rothstein, and Rothstein made the point a long time ago that, right, his thesis on Watergate was that Watergate was actually about the compromise material, and that he realized that what the CIA was up to was compromising people, and that 70% of high-level political power players are compromised. That was what he came to. This is the famous New York police detective, right, who realized that all of his department was corrupt, right? I mean, isn't one of those Al Pacino movies about him? Isn't that right? Y'all will know. Is it Serpico or Dog Day Afternoon? I get them mixed up. Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon. I forget which one. Isn't Serpico about, is that Jim Rothstein? Y'all will know. Somebody in the Twitter tell me. I think that's right. But so that's what we're getting at here. Wait a minute. So networks international of this stuff going on. And then when you think about it, well, yeah, of course it is. How else would this be run? So then they get into the case of, what is this? In the case of, Australia. Dr. Raina Michelson. So back in the 90s and the 2000s, there was a woman, Raina Michelson, who had done a bunch of interviews of boys having things happen to them at a school. And she found mountains of evidence, took it to all the higher-ups, to all the cops, and the cops were covering it up. And again, that's what do we see in the case of many of the so-called serial killers? The cops covered up and they have accomplices. And by the way, that's what Gacy himself said too for a long time. And that's what Serpico was all about. Hoo-ha! Right? Now, if you think this sounds outlandish, don't forget, that's right, Dog Day is about the bank robbery. I haven't watched those since high school, but I remember them. I remember both of them, but forget the name. It's because it's Pacino. I'm getting Al Pacino mixed up. Al Cappuccino. Al Cappuccino. The black nobility families, right? If you think this stuff sounds out there, I was going to mention Hostel, by the way. Thank you for that comment. But remember Dope Inc., right? Big expose, Dope Inc., and it showed how the black market of drugs was run by British East India Company, the elites, the intelligence networks. They were just there to run the drugs. Duh. What did we see in our Mafia series? Mobsters running the heroin. In the 1940s and 50s, the Sicilian Mafia ran 90% of the heroin to the U.S. How did they do that? Because they worked with intelligence. Duh. Who ran the opium prior to that? French intelligence, and then British intelligence, and then America. Air America, bro. Go watch Mel Gibson and Robert De Niro. I mean, not Robert Downey Jr., Mel Gibson, Air America, which we did a whole thing on that. So in other words, if they can do that with the black market of the heroin and the dope, don't you think they can do the same things with this market? Of course. Why are you so naive? How do people not know this? Yeah, did you not watch the Barry Seal movie with Tom Coombe? Right. I mean, there's Tom Coombe movies where he plays Barry Seal. I mean, dude, how do people not know this? And I'll tell you what, when it comes to this stuff, right? I mean, people that are millennial Zoomer age, yeah, French Connection, they don't have any problem figuring. It's like they figure this stuff out like that. Boomers, dude, boomers cannot figure this out. They cannot. It doesn't matter how many cases, doesn't matter how many proofs, doesn't matter how many, like, they just cannot get that the intelligence agencies work with mobsters, and that's how drugs come into the country. We gotta fight the cartels. We gotta have a war on drugs. What? It's kind of astonishing, really. And I mean, the funny thing about boomers too is that they're always talking about how you need to, learn the ways of the world. You need to go travel, see the world, learn how the world really works. Do you know how the world really works? I mean, because ironically, it seems like I can learn better about how the world really works by watching movies than actually traveling the world, right? I mean, how am I going to see how the world really works if I'm traveling, staying in a bunch of Airbnbs or something? I mean, military. I'm not signing up for Uncle Samuel's military. Are you kidding? Give me a break. Get out of here. Uncle Samuel, dude, he wants to make me a son of Sam, doesn't he? By the way, did you know that in Vietnam, the Vietnam soldiers, they call themselves the Sons of Sam? And where does the Phoenix program come from? Oh, yeah. Vietnam. Anyway, so this Dr. Randa Michelson in the 90s and 2000s pushed and pushed and pushed, and all her stuff was squashed. Nope, you're not getting anywhere. Career, I think, ruined. Harassed, threatened. Then they went after a famous coach. What was this guy's name? Famous swim team coach in the 90s. Australia's gold medalist was trained by this guy. Who is this person? Forget his name. Some famous swimming dude. I can't find his name. Turns out he was a big part of this, and he just fled, and they protected him. Basically, he fled to Brazil, and they protected him. Volkers, that's his name, Volkers. Because it is believed he, after many, many counts of this PEDO, he was protected. He just went to another country, nothing ever happened. And he went to teach swimming in another country. Let's see, there's another one. The gatekeeping occult network. Catholic Church long been guilty of abuse and cover-up. Local, what is this area? I don't know anything about, I've never been to Australia. I don't know the areas of Australia, but Sydney. Networks in Sydney covered up, protected. People that pushed for it. A woman named investigation. What's her name? Oh, the prosecutor Bannister, Margaret Cunning, supposedly would squash any investigations. Anyway, so what they allege, Rothstein and I guess her, is that there were people in specific, moles in specific areas that could squash any real investigation. So that's how this works. And that makes sense too if you've read Tarpley's book, Synthetic Terror, because he talks about how they, in order to run an event like the Big Nine event, you don't have to control everything. You have key people at certain places in the infrastructure and in the architecture of government. And that makes sense with this too, right? And that reminds me of don't forget, in Berkowitz's case, wasn't the famous DA, the DA, I'm not joking, was a former CIA operative. Interesting. And by the way, who could watch that documentary and come away not believing that there was a cult, a cult, not a cult, a cult, and that stuff going on with Berkowitz when everybody around that case gets killed? I mean, come on, really? And you think that there's not, that people aren't being offed because they know what's going on? I mean, it's so obvious. The Carrs, the two members of the Son of Sam cult, John Carr, Michael Carr, end up dead before they get to the police, and then somebody slashes Berkowitz's throat in prison. Dude, come on! It's more than obvious. Like, it takes boomer rationalization skills to rationalize that. Well, you don't know that it's a cult. Well, that could just be that they live a hellish lifestyle and they ended up dead. They had a car wreck. He was cleaning his gun and it went off and the bullet went through his face. It's just if you're in prison, you're going to get your throat slit, right? I mean, come on, dude. These are like, mega high profile cases, could bust really powerful people. Anyway, and it's mentioned in this report here that what often tends to be the case is lower level dummy thugs get burned. And that's the advantage of a cult, right? Is because if you have a cult, or if you're a cult leader, and many of these creeper types have what appears to be a coven or something like that, those dummies are expendable, right? Your brainwashed cult dummies are expendable. Look at the Manson scenario. You got a bunch of idiot, brainwashed teenage girls go do the dirty work. They are expendable. And that is just like the model of the wound up government patsy, Oswald, Sirhan, again from a cult, duh. That's blamed for stuff, right? 1993, WTC, Imad Salam, another example, right? Watch the Newburgh Sting. Again, if you've not seen that, I don't know, let's see if it's still on YouTube. It used to be on YouTube. And you're like, now why are you telling me this, Jay? What's this? Look, if you watch here it is. Watch the Newburgh Sting documentary. And then you think about the cults and the serial killers. It's the exact same thing, dude. It's the same pattern. It's the same model. It's the same, like, pyramid scam, dude. That's what it is. It's like a cult version of a pyramid scam to create a stable of idiot loons who will go do what you want. So there is Newburgh Sting documentary, and that's about an entrapment operation to get black people in prison that had converted to Islam. When they get out, funnel them into this radical mosque, which is just a total cutout, then use them to go do something stupid. It's like, once you see this, it's just like, this is so obvious. Come on, really? Who is so dumb as to fall for this stuff? Well, people do. And many, many, many cults, not all, many, many, many cults fit that model. Jim Jones, bruh. Jim Jones, dude. There you go. Another CIA connected, and he counts as a serial killer. Yeah, great example, right? We can't forget Jim Jones. John Bown or Greg Reese. One of the two just did a really good brief summation of the Jim Jones situation. And look, Jim Jones model, right? Using poor black people, same model of Gary Heidnick's cult. We haven't even done Gary Heidnick, but he did the same thing as Jim Jones. Jehovah's Witnesses, they try to recruit in poor black neighborhoods, poor Hispanic neighborhoods. The Newberg Sting documentary shows the pipeline of Islam in prison that targets blacks and then funnels them into these scam cutouts when they get out. Now that's cults, but look at the other groups too, where it's the same stuff, right? FBI cutouts. Think about things like Elohim. Think about recent things that were in the news that were totally obvious. Black Panthers, right? They were steered into radical stuff via Richard Aoki, the FBI informant. COINTELPRO is what I'm saying. Now, we're not in the era of COINTELPRO. We're in the era where it doesn't matter and they still do all the same things because it works. Yes, also, Harrison Smith did a good thing on Jim Jones. And don't forget either, Dan Mitrione, who was in Brazil, Peru, and he was studying the indigenous religions for mind control and torture stuff because he was the CIA torture guy. He is who's gay. Is it Mayhew or Mitrione? Mayhew, excuse me. Mayhew is who gave the $150,000 to Santos Trafficante to try to get some killings done. And it was Mitrione who had the connection to World Vision. Is that right? And Mark David Chapman had a connection. Isn't that right? Mark David Chapman had a connection to Dan Mitrione and World Vision. And Mark David Chapman gave bullets to Kenneth Anger after the event, or right before the event. Which one is it? So we got a super smart chat there, and you guys will remember. Did Mark David Chapman give bullets to Kenneth Anger right before or after the event with John Lennon? You guys will remember. But so why did we go into all that? Well, because it's all connected in the sense of the same patterns, right? We just, again, y'all, this is stuff I've studied since 2003. Okay, this is none of this shit's new. So, I spent many years studying the government geopolitical model of these kinds of things. And then you start thinking, well, now wait a minute. Here's serial killers over here involved in cults. This connects to organized crime. So this stuff going over here. Oh, wait a minute. How come these people? Oh, wait a minute. Savile is a perfect connect between the highest levels of politics, finance, nobility, quote unquote, the Pope, and entertainment, and government and intelligence. You see what the pattern that's emerging here? Nobody remembers. Kenneth Anger made good movies. If you can make it through those movies are ridiculous. But anyway, so there's another few incidents where people in the 90s, 2000s started pushing to have things investigated. And now Australia is just a test case, right? We could pick other countries, no different. Except that some countries seem to be hotspots for this stuff, which could be various reasons for that. UK countries under the dominion of the Queen, Commonwealth, they seem to be really bad for this stuff. I wonder why. Canada, right? A lot of nasty stuff going on in Canada. Does anybody remember? And am I correct that it's Dan Mitrione that's connected to World Vision that has the connection to Mark David Chapman? I believe that's correct. Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong on that. I hate to get my facts wrong, but we're dealing with like thousands of pieces of detail here. So I can't remember everything. I know that Mark David Chapman gifted Kenneth Anger bullets, but I don't know if it was right before he did that to John Lennon or right after. Either way, it's pretty wild. You never heard that? Yeah, we covered that. Where did we get into that? One of my streams recently, we covered that. But that's relevant because Anger, right? That's a process church connection, Crowleyan connection, Manson connection. You see, same circles there. Yeah, I've got Hollywood Babylon. By the way, my book is better than Hollywood Babylon. If you didn't know. Seriously, my book is way better. Because Hollywood Babylon is like, you read Hollywood Babylon, and it's like sex scandals of Hollywood stars from the 1920s. Who cares about that, dude? Nobody even knows who those people are. Fatty Arbuckle. Fatty Arbuckle was drunk and went to prostitutes. Whoa, dude. Dude, this book is way better than that. And everybody who's read it knows it too. So if you want the best, the real Hollywood Babylon, it's not talking about a bunch of damn gross sex stories and people that were drunk. Go read my books, baby. And you can get signed copies at jasonanalysis.com. Anyway. So back to this. We got to get to Rosemary's Baby. Adelaide, South Australia. More incidents of this with Dr. Randall Michelson. She keeps pushing. It keeps getting squashed. Another incident with a character named Max. What is this person? Max Mccintyre. His job was to dispose of bodies for the local cult. At the time of his arrest, I think, or the murders, 2 South Australian policewomen were at his house when children disappeared and the murder occurred. This suggests local law enforcement perhaps were involved. They covered up. And this is what ties into the case known as the family. This is not the Anne Hamilton Byrne cult family. This is Lowfield has a video on this. This is a different thing. And this one is relevant because it got covered up and nobody got in trouble. And the victims, people alleged that it was higher level wealthy people. All right, shocker, right? Is this it? Is it called the Backpacker murder? I think it's the Backpackers. Let's see if this is it. Backpacker murders. Oh, it doesn't say who it was. I think this is it. If this is it, I'll put it in the thing for you guys here. Bunch of missing people. So the Backpacker murders in Australia is not the same thing as the Yosemite killer in the U.S. That's also sometimes called the Backpack killer. Two different things. Let's make sure this is it.
If in fact it was true, then let's do a plea on the basis of his psychiatric condition.
Yes, that's got to be it. You got Australian people talking.
Didn't urge him to plead guilty.
There's a killer out there on the...
There was a lead up to getting...
He's out there killing. He's running wild now. Aye, mate.
Then he sacked me.
There's a killer by the...
Disturbing, he said.
There's a killer by the name of Crocodile Dundee. And he's out there carving up alligators. Serving them up for breakfast, mate. Vegemite dinners at alligators. Anyway. So that talks about... I think that's the right video. The backpack murders. I'm sure all of our in-house Aussies know of this one. Okay, yeah. No, I know that's not Adelaide. Adelaide was this one before this. Adelaide, most infamous unsolved murder for 55 years. The story is very much related to Dr. Raina Michelson. I know that's a different one. The police in Australia are committed to covering up the truth, it is alleged. That's a different case. The backpack murders is separate, and I think they're saying that another woman has emerged out of this milieu of the backpack murders, the family, named Rachel Vaughn. And she is supposedly the daughter of Mad Max. Not Mel Gibson. Mad Max, as in Max Mccartney, the guy who disposed of the bodies for this cult. South Australian network known as The Family. And that he had a kid, a daughter, who is saying that her dad was involved in all this stuff. Goes by the name of Mad Max. Oh yeah, we got a lot of cults down under. Anyway, so in each of these cases of people exposing information in Australia, the stories get squashed because it's the establishment that's compromised. And that was the point that Rothstein was making, right? 70%, he claims, the famous detective, 70% of high-powered politicians, 70% are compromised by this kind of blackmail, basically. And again, why does that hard? That shouldn't be hard to understand now that everything's come out. The whole world knows about Jeff Stein-Effrey. Do you think that that's the only operation like this? No, there's a bunch of these. Go read D.C. Madam's book, right? Deborah Jean Palfrey. Go read Henry Vinson, Confessions of a D.C. Madam. There's books on this by the Madams, dummy. What are you talking about? Anyway, so there's a lot more in that report. I'm not going to do all that right now. We'll get into more of that maybe in the part 2. But let's talk about how this was put into fiction in Rosemary's Baby. And don't forget, this got taken down not because of anything bad in it, but for dumb reasons, we'll say. But it's up on the rock. And by the way, we never know in this atmosphere nowadays how long we'll be here on the tube. You just never know. So I did take one of these excellent videos. It was my second video to get like mega views, and of course that's the one that gets destroyed, of course, right? But you can go watch it on, where's it at? Rockville. On the rock, baby. It's one of the first ones I put on there. Where's it at? Yes, here it is. it won't work on YouTube. So if you want to watch this video, now why is this relevant? Now, I don't even remember how I came across this. Somebody said you got to go watch Eye of the Devil, which is this. It's Sharon Tate's first movie, and it's got Donald.
It's got Donald Pleasance as the Luciferian priest. If you don't know, I can do a perfect impression of Donald Pleasance. And he plays the Luciferian priest.
Yes, I just spoiled the movie, but don't worry. You could probably figure it out. Eyes Wide Shut, 30, 40 years before Eyes Wide Shut. It's called Eye of the Devil. And it's not Roman Polanski. It's Sharon Tate's first movie. And guess what? She plays a witch. Now, the story, supposedly, in real life, she had just been initiated into witchcraft, which is totally plausible given that she's in the circles of Roman Polanski and Manson and crew. And they're hanging out with Peter Sellers. There's allegations of very extreme prawn, P-R-O-N, prawn, going on in the circles with these people. Presumably that's how Sharon Tate moved up the ladder and got some of the roles she got. I think that's very plausible. And if you watch Eye of the Devil, it's pretty wild, like her role in the movie as a witch and what happens to her in real life. It's like, whoa, dude. Now, I didn't spoil the whole movie for you. Don't get mad. It's going to be obvious. It's going to be obvious anyway. Now, the thing about Eye of the Devil is it's not that great of a movie because it ended up, there was production problems. So it ended up having like 3 different directors and it went through a bunch of changes. However, very relevant for what we're talking about. It's not just 30 years. It's not just Eyes Wide Shut 30 years earlier. It's also Rosemary's Baby earlier. And again, we can see why that would be given the fact that it's got Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate ends up with Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski, I think, at least was. I don't know if he still believes in these things, but it is some sort of Luciferian or Satanist or something. Or witch, I don't know. But something like that. Everybody knows what happened, right, with him having to leave the country. And when we look at his canon of films, he does make good movies, by the way. Roman Polanski does actually have multiple good movies. I mean, he's a talented director despite his personal life. What we do see in Roman Polanski's movies is a pretty consistent pattern of, pretty satanic, esoteric, Luciferian stuff. And I mean, in ways, and we've done Ninth Gate. It's in my second book. I mean, in ways, Ninth Gate is more devilish than Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby does have a creepy factor to it just because it was so famous and so edgy for that time. But, I mean, Eye of the Devil kind of creeped me out a little more than Rosemary's Baby. It is creepy, especially when she's trying to get away. When she goes to the doctor and Dr. Saperstein is part of the cult, right? I mean, you already know that, even if you haven't seen the movie. But regardless, I don't know. Something about Eye of the Devil is pretty creepy. Because it's old, right? It's like you're in a French village and you think, oh, it's, everybody's Catholic here and there's going to be some reconciliation here. But no. And also, I don't know, just that at this time period, something this edgy was being put out. It's just, I don't know, pretty wild, right? I mean, it's almost as if the people who are making the movie and are involved in these circles, they actually believe that we're entering into a satanic aeon by which they can now publicly make these movies. And that action of making the movies and putting them out there actually helps transition us into the satanic aeon. I'm not joking. That's literally the mindset here. So keep in mind that when this is not just Roman Polanski. This is based on an Ira Levin book. And Ira Levin is the same guy that did Stepford Wives. And Stepford Wives, yes, I recognize that Stepford Wives is situated in the attitude of like feminist liberation. However, it is still hinting at or getting at or touching on the MK Ultra program. Totally. I mean, it's obvious. And by the way, is it also talking about sex bots? I mean, perhaps, right? It's a genuinely creepy movie. I mean, again, yes, I know it's feminist. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I mean, there's some creepy stuff, especially predictive programming type stuff going on in Stepford Wives. It also, bears similarity to Rosemary's Baby, again, because of the same author. But don't forget also that if you even in Roman Polanski's earlier movies that were even comedies, The Fearless Vampire Killers. I remember one time my mom said, "Hey, you should watch this old Roman Polanski movie." I was like, "This looks ridiculous. It's a stupid. Why would I want to watch a Roman Polanski comedy about vampires? This looks ridiculous." Well, I watched it, and in that they discuss the vampires are all servants of Lucifer. They're Luciferian vampires, which I thought was very interesting. So we're going to notice this theme pretty consistently. And remember that Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan, in the circles with the same people that we're talking about here. Did you know Anton LaVey went and visited at least, I think, 2 serial killers in prison? He went and met with Richard Ramirez, which is significant. And this movie, by the way, this was released, Rosemary's Baby was released during the transition from the hippie 60s to the Manson LSD era of the 70s. Now, LaVey was also, as you know, close to Jane Mansfield, and Sammy Davis Jr. had joined the Church of Satan, as everybody knows, I'm sure. But guess what? Did you notice the Michael Aquino, Anton LaVey, Sammy Davis Jr. connection? Yes, they all hung out. Because Aquino used to be in Church of Satan before he went on to found Temple of Set, which is supposed to be a more serious, right, approach to Satanism. Less than a year after the release of this movie, Roman Polanski lost his pregnant wife, Sharon Tate. She was ritualistically murdered, of course, by the Manson cult, as I'm sure everyone knows. And it's also significant to tie things together that this movie is shot, I don't think this is by accident, at the Dakota building. And the atmosphere of the creepy apartment and, the whole apartment building basically being owned by the Satanists. I mean, it should be obvious, like bells going off. Wait a minute. The Dakota building, that is where John Lennon is killed. As we said, Mark David Chapman, John Lennon's killer, gives bullets as a gift to Kenneth Anger. Kenneth Anger in the process Manson Luciferian circles. By the way, as we all know, who else is in Lucifer Rising? Mick Jagger. And is it Bobby Beausoleil? Right? From the Manson circles. I mean, this is wild. This stuff is wild. And if you're familiar with Mccartney's stuff, then already the process church connections are just as wild as well, right? Now, I read all that process stuff in the William Kennedy book originally. That was when I first learned all this stuff. By the way, Vanilla Sky. Tom Coombs' apartment in Vanilla Sky is the Dakota building. Interesting connection there. And what is Tom Coombs involved in? Scientology. What is L. Ron Hubbard coming out of? Crowley, Scientology, process, Manson, process, Berkowitz, process, even to Dahmer. The Dahmer process connection, which few have noticed. Is there a Bundy process connection? No, there's only one. No, there is. There is. By allegation, right? Mad Dog McKenna claims in his interviews that he was working with Process and Bundy. That Bundy and he had a correspondence. Now, that's his claim. Don't know, but yes. Once again. By the way, hardly anybody has made the connection that you just heard me make. Hardly anyone. I think Lowellfield has made that connection on his channel, and that's about it. I hope you guys are enjoying this. What process, dude? Where you been? We've been talking about the process church for 2 hours. What are you talking about? What process? Bro, rewind, dude. You can't come in the middle of the stream try to figure out what's going on. I'm giving y'all some like real shit right here. And I'm getting dumb questions. What's the process? What process? Process Church of the Final Judgment, bro. So as we said, the story takes place in the Dakota building. John Lennon murdered there in 1980. The main guy, right? What's his name? Cassavetes, right? Guy Woodhouse is a struggling actor, and Rosemary is his naive, simple girl wife who comes from a strict Catholic upbringing. So she's going to be the perfect sacrifice, right? In a way, she's a type of sacrifice, not a human sacrifice like death, but you know what I mean, right? Everybody's seen, I'm sure, Rosemary's Baby. Is Rosemary a stand-in inversion of the Virgin Mary? Presumably, right? And that would make sense given that the satanic coven basically lives in and runs this giant apartment building. So they're looking for someone to bring in to be the vehicle for Antichrist for their satanic aeon, right? We notice, of course, we're seeing they're showing their elderly, weird, eccentric neighbors, the Estevets. They invite the couple over for dinner and they coax Guy, right, by saying, well, you've got a long way to go. If you want to make it in Hollywood, you need us. Right? You need connections, and you got to pay the price. Now, this is fascinating because we're seeing that in Rosemary's Baby, we're basically told that to make it in Hollywood, you got to join a cult. You got to join a satanic cult. You got to pay the piper to make it in Hollywood. And everybody, now we're all sitting around, is there a cult in Hollywood? Do you gotta do crazy things to make it in Hollywood? I don't know. Sounds like a conspiracy theory. And there's freaking movies already about it. I mean, did you watch the movie? That's what's in the movie, right? And wouldn't Roman Polanski know? Yeah. I mean, have you watched Ninth Gate? Ninth Gate is more satanic than Rosemary's Baby. It's not scary. I mean, I can't imagine anyone actually being scared by Ninth Gate, but it's more revelatory in the sense of the philosophy of the movie is more satanic than Rosemary. Rosemary's Baby is kind of goofy. It's a little, almost at times a little tongue-in-cheek. I mean, I'm not saying it's not creepy, but it's kind of over-the-top goofy. I mean, the demon in a big lizard suit or beast suit. It's supposed to be the beast. But I mean, it's goofy, right? And a little serpent baby, a little velociraptor baby. That's cheesy, dude. Come on. I mean, it's like, what? It is creepy, but it's also kind of dumb at the same time. You know what I mean? And maybe that's just because in our era, right? We're so used to scary movies. It doesn't faze us. But I mean, in the Ninth Gate, he goes on that journey, right? And it's following the tarot cards, and he's going through an alchemical initiation process. Obviously, that's what the movie's about. And you know, it ends with him confronting the big bookseller guy who has the secret library and the secret text of the devil. And it's all kind of a ruse, but we find out that the devil was leading him along the whole time, right? As that chick that he met, that model or whatever she was. Let's see. So Roman Cassavetes says that his father, who we find out later was a powerful witch, was a theatrical director, and he worked with all the biggest stars at the time. So if you want to make it, you got to be with us. And by the way, did you know one of the extras in this movie, who is an associate of Cassavetes, is the guy, he plays a small role in this. He's the guy that went on to create the Holy Hell cult. Did you know that? That is crazy, dude. If you've not seen the Holy Hell documentary, I do recommend it. I don't think the whole documentary is on YouTube. It could be. You can go find it somewhere. Well, you can rent it on YouTube. It is worth watching. And this weirdo, I mean, this dude is weird. He is in the movie. He's I forget what his role is. It says some small role in the movie, right? This yuppie cult leader. The gay yuppie cult leader of the Holy Hell cult is in the movie Rosemary's Baby. You can't make this stuff up, right? Now, what's interesting about that, right? Because in the plot of the movie, it's that you gotta serve Satan to make it in Hollywood. So that's what, right, Guy is doing to make it up the ladder. And they're moving into this apartment, we later find out, because that's the elderly couple has coaxed him into this so that he can have this success, but he's got to sell out his wife. And it's sex magic, right? That's what's going on here, because he has to pimp her out to the cult. And then they manipulate her with drugs. Common, we see this all over in reality. This is really what goes on. And the idea is to impregnate her. This is the Babylon working, right? This is the, if you know Jack Parsons, right? Out of the Crowley cult, in the circles of Crowley, the Babylon working is the desire to invoke the apocalypse, immanentize the eschaton, bring about the end times via this crazy demonic ritual that they were trying to do via his mixing his rocket science, jet propulsion laboratory, right, with his occult, alchemical, satanic philosophy, whereby he thought that the apocalypse was not a book of the Bible, it's a magical ritual text. Okay, that's what they think. So, ironically, that's what is kind of going on here, which is that they're going to bring in the satanic aeon by impregnating her with the entity or the child of the new aeon, right? The crown and conquering child. But we don't exactly know all that's going on at the beginning. Mia Farrow playing the girl, or she meets a girl who in the laundry room who says that she was taken in off the street. So they take in street girls. Again, cults love to do this. The satanic cults do this. Many accounts of them using hobos, tramps, for rituals for sacrifice. The girl in this 60 Minutes says that. She says that they would take hobos. Kerth Barker says they take hobos and kill them. Poor hobos. And anyway, this girl ends up as a so-called suicide. So there you go. Tramp taken in. She ends up sacrificed. It's obvious, right? This really goes on. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like, this is the account that we get in the real abuse survivors. Then she had a pendant full of smelly stuff, some dank. She has some dank weed in that pendant, and it was called Tannis root, which is made up and is a play on Satanus, right? Tannis root, Satan. So this is like continually making her sick throughout. So she's being drugged. She's being put under a spell. And then after this sacrifice, Guy gets a call saying that he will be the lead character in a play. And he shoots up the theater, right, scene to be the hottest thing in the theater scene. And this is thanks to the occult power. And as a result of the ritual and the murder and his joining the cult and the offering, he's becoming more self-centered, vain, preoccupied. And he's becoming like Hollywood stars that sell their soul. Now he's totally interested in making this new Aeon child with Rosemary, which is the next level of his initiation, right? So he's got to sacrifice more if he wants to go to the next level out of being the hottest stage actor into Hollywood. And of course, Guy is willing to offer up Rosemary. One thing that was interesting about the trance states. So she has these bizarre trance states and dreams and visions. And they harken back to her Catholic guilt that she has. She has a vision of a JFK lookalike. She sees the Sistine Chapel. And she sees the Pope wearing that Tannis root pendant. Now, a lot of speculation has been made about this because this came out right around the same time as the visit of Paul VI to New York. So some people made a connection, and by the way, there is ample evidence that Paul VI himself perhaps was a Satanist. There is some evidence to suggest that. The irony about that, the weird part about that, is that it's Malachi Martin, who is a dubious, doubtful figure, but who admits that all of this Satanism occurred in the Vatican under Paul VI and earlier. It comes up in Blood on the Altar that when Paul VI was elected, supposedly the OTO and Crowleyans had a celebration because I guess presumably it means that they got one of their own in. Now the OTO had also supposedly almost gotten a pope elected right around the time of Leo XIII, Cardinal Vilot, V-I-L-O-T, Cardinal Vilot. I believe that's right. So is it plausible that the head of the worldwide satanic sect or a high up person was Paul VI? I think very possible. In fact, Malachi Martin, who I think was part of it, he hints at that, right? He hints at that not just in Keys This Blood, but also in the very rare, hard to find book Windswept House, where he, in fiction, writes that the Vatican was full of Satanists. And again, it's not hard to... Is it hard for anybody to believe nowadays that the Pope could be, like, legit satanic? I mean, with Francis, come on, dude. Anyway. Let's see, back to my notes. So they keep drugging her. Her vision... The vision is weird. That's one of the weirdest sequences in the film. And then she has, right, the remembrance, the memory of the suppressed memory of being drugged, and the cult basically sexually having their way, and that this being, and I think we're supposed to think that the devil was possessing her husband. I think that's what we're supposed to think here, right? Because he changes into this yellow-eyed, goofy-looking devil with claws. And then she starts to suspect that they're tricking her, right? So she stops not eating all of her, laced food. Susan Atkins, a member of the Manson family who murdered Sharon Tate, was also a follower of LaVey. So that's where people get the point about Susan Atkins being also satanic, right? As a witch. So that's the witchcraft connection and angle to the Manson stuff. Everybody focuses on the process. Yeah, we know. But Susan Atkins supposedly was into LaVey, which is also relevant for the Tate murder. But is there a parallel between Sharon Tate and the Rosemary character? Right? Is Guy like Roman and Rosemary like Tate? Maybe. Then she decides, okay, well, I'm not feeling well. She's going to go see a person that she thinks is a good guy, Dr. Saperstein. He delivers all the high society babies. Well, what is that telling us? By the way, mental institutes, there was a case of the occult network in Australia in that big report where they were controlling some mental institutes. The story of Savile includes Savile being given free reign in a gigantic mental hospital. That include it was like the mental ward, but he would also go over to the baby ward. You can't make this stuff up. Now, and you say, well, no, wait a minute. How could he do that? He's not a doctor. They just called him a doctor. I'm not joking. They gave him a title, Dr. Jimmy Savile, Order of the British Empire. And he could go into the wings of all the hospitals. He could go into the morgue. He would wheel the bodies out of the morgue at night and go do stuff in the woods. I'm not kidding. It's it's that crazy. I mean, this dude could just do whatever he wanted. And they even asked him about this. They're like, can you really do everything you want? And he said something like, there's not many blokes that could do whatever they want, but I was one of them because I was protected, right? By the way, I'm told that, if I remember, because there's the rumor that Anton LaVey consulted on this movie, which I think that's plausible. I think he did consult on the movie. However, the story that he's in the devil suit, right? I think that's not true. But I mean, he's in the circles of Roman Polanski, right? I don't think it's not out of the realm of possibility that he consulted on the movie. Yeah, how'd you like to wake up and think you're going into surgery or something, and you look over and you see Jimmy Savile is putting you under anesthesia? It's like, just kill me, dude. Let me out of here. I'd rather die, because whatever this dude is going to be doing is worse than death. So they isolate her. They do all the cult techniques, right? She's isolated. Everybody that she flees to is in on it. I think that's the scariest psychological aspect of this film, is that everybody that they might flee to is in on it. And that's one thing that cults try to do, right? There's nowhere you can run. Where are you going to go? There's nobody. You can't do anything. There's nowhere you can go, right? Like in Body Snatchers. One of those 80s movies was good that I think we covered it. We've done so much now, I can't even remember what we haven't done. It's either Spellbinder or Spellcaster. Two 80s movies that are interesting. Not this TV show, whatever this TV show. So here we go. Kelly Preston, Spellbinder. That's it, I think. If you want a B movie, this Eyes Wide Shut / Rosemary's Baby, there's another one. It's Spellcaster. No, Spellbinder. I'm sorry. Let's see. What's Spellcaster? I'm getting it mixed up. We forgot to include this in our Eyes Wide Shut like movies. Spellcaster. You know, if it's full moon, you know it's good, right? Full Moon Pictures. Okay, it's not Spellcaster. It's Spellbinder with Kelly Preston. That's a B. Eyes Wide Shut. And it's about her being in a satanic cult. I won't spoil that one for you. That's a fun one to watch. That's interesting, right? Yes, by the way, Starry Eyes is another Eyes Wide Shut type movie. We covered Starry Eyes, but there's a freaking fruit fly in here. So then they give her a book because she's upset. Oh, read this book, and it's all of them witches, right? They're all witches, exactly. They're all satanic witches. She realizes that the Cassavetes are a secret society known to practice blood rituals, human sacrifice. She figures out the covens engage in psychic warfare, and they harm people. And that is what happened to the actor who gave her the book, explaining that they are in a cult. All of them witches. By the way, I noticed if you zoom in a couple of those frames around that sequence, guess what book is on their shelf? I'm not kidding. The Life of Sammy Davis Jr. Yes, you can't make this up. And that's not by accident. New Year's Eve party, 1966. They call it Year One. That is what Anton LaVey said was coming that year. It's also Crowley's new Aeon, right? So the baby that they want to be born is June 6, 1966, to make it 666. Kind of obvious, right? So we know that this is going to be some kind of Antichrist / new Aeon type child. Her strong maternal instinct, of course, makes her accept the baby, and so she becomes Satan's mother, right? The whole idea of her as the inverse of Virgin Mary. So this is an Antichrist story. It's about her giving birth to the child of the new Aeon, right? Aleister Crowley's child of the new Aeon, the bringer of a new era in world history, the Aeon of the crown and conquering child. Before casting Mia Farrow, Roman Polanski originally wanted Sharon Tate to play this role. So that kind of lends credence to what I was saying earlier. Is it supposed to represent her? As I said, Sharon had just broke out 3 years earlier in her role as a witch in Eye of the Devil. Eye of the Devil is about human sacrifice. Now, weird incident. Roman Polanski allowed himself to be photographed by Life magazine in the room where Sharon Tate was killed. It's bizarre. Roman Polanski, of course, charged with the incident with a 13-year-old that I'm sure everybody knows about. There's theories about dark films of dark stuff being filmed at the Tate Polanski residence that included people in the Manson circles, Peter Sellers, rumors, I think even of Marilyn Monroe being involved in some of these. Don't know if that's true, not substantiated, but at least there are stories that this exists. Very plausible. I mean, now, knowing what we know nowadays, of course they would be involved in this kind of stuff, right? I mean, blackmail, child stuff. I mean, that's what goes on, right? So not surprising that we would see that here. And then, of course, as you know, at the end of it, we get the ridiculous ending that everybody's in on it, and she just accepts her role because of her maternal instinct. Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, the devil is unsettling when you know what happened, right? I hope you enjoy this. Please hit like and share. In part 2, we'll get back into more of the essay, the report that I was reading about trafficking in Eastern Europe, Moldova, Romania. We'll get into the details more about the stuff going on in Australia. I wish I could find that 60 Minutes report on Australia, but it seems to just be buried. It was really popular on YouTube 3 or 4 years ago, right? I mean, had like millions of views. It was this, I'm pretty sure it was 60 Minutes Australia, and it was an entire hour-long report on the pedo stuff in Australia. In Parliament at the highest levels. I mean, it was like it was kind of wild that they had done this, right? I mean, it's like the huge mainstream media stuff, right? So, although that's hard to find, maybe somebody could find it on another thing, BitChute. Maybe it's on, it's probably been buried. That's my guess. That there was a little too much in that, so they might have buried that. So go watch the next best example, the one that I just showed you. Backpack killer here in the family. And then remember in this one, each of the people in the HBO documentary discuss being abused in some way. It appears in every case. I think they profile 4 people in this HBO documentary, and they're all abused. Like they're all part of the first woman, or is it the one with the blonde one with the dogs? I think that might be a different documentary. I can't remember. But I mean, it's obvious that these people aren't faking it. Like these people were raised in demonic cults, and they were abused. There's another one. There's another documentary. That's what it is. There's another documentary of a woman, and she claims to have like 7 or 14, and she walks a dog all the time. She's blonde. That one's worth watching because if I can find it again, because she details all of this cult that she was raised in. Let's see if I can find that one. Oh, this might be it. I might have found it. Let's see if this is it.
Grammarly can help you write quickly.
Oh, that just reminded me. I don't know if all you guys have seen it, but does everybody remember the BBC documentary about the mind control twins? That one is crazy. I mean, that one's so wild. I don't even like. No, this is not that woman. This is a different woman. I wish I could find all. There's so many of these great documentaries that have just kind of like been like they've been flushed down the memory hole, and nobody will ever remember it. Here's another one on Satanism in Australia. I can see that woman's face. It's not Kim Nobles. It's another woman. It's a blonde woman who walks her dogs. Is this it? Anyway, I know this is boring, but if I find it, you'll actually appreciate me for finding it. Because it's very revelatory. I don't know. There's like a million of these videos now on YouTube. What is that BBC? So there's this BBC documentary that came out many years ago. It kind of blew everybody away because it was so like inexplicable events about these two Nordic chick twins that are clearly like MK Ultra. Probably the closest, if you want an actual, like the best evidence of an actual MK Ultra assassin, it's this. I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I don't think most of MK Ultra is about that, but it's called something in the fast lane. Is this it? Highway twins run into, that's it, Britain's busiest motorway. That's not the full BBC. You got to watch the full thing. I mean, this will blow your mind, especially if you're a skeptic.
So extraordinarily bizarre,
Yeah.
It defies any logical explanation. In fact, it's so weird, if it wasn't for the cameras, you'd be hard-pressed to believe any of it even happened. But tragically, this is a real story. It began when 40-year-old identical twins from Sweden wandered out onto one of Britain's busiest motorways. That single moment of madness triggered a sequence of events that ended in murder.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Some of the images.
I mean, it's so crazy. You almost you're going to be tempted to think maybe even the BBC just made this up, like it's an exercise. And can we get Swedish twins? Can somebody? I know we gotta go. Madness in the Fast Lane. Yes, I found it. Here it is. I can't believe I found that. 8 years ago. Here you go. See, all you guys that already found it. You guys are better than me. Now, you say, oh, I've seen this. But we forget this kind of stuff, right? So we get lost in like today's information and data, and we forget the crazy from 8 years ago, right? It was like, what is going on? Yes, everybody should watch Madness in the Fast Lane. I don't know what's going. I mean, it looks like they're some kind of like two sisters raised in probably some kind of super soldier programs. They're assassins. That's what it looks like. I mean, I don't know how else to explain that unless the BBC just wholesale created a completely fake story to see if they could get away with it. I mean, here is another report done by 60 Minutes. Who is somebody? People at 60 Minutes Australia, it looks like they've done some pretty daring reports. By the way, if anybody can find, Madness in the Fast Lane. If anybody can find the 60 Minutes report from 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago about pedos in UK Parliament and Australia Parliament, please link that one because I cannot find that one. And that one is another 60-minute full, hour thing of very relevant to what we're talking about tonight. Anyway, so I hope you guys see the point, right? We've got a movie, one of the most famous horror movies of all time, up there with The Shining. I just posted my never before seen to the public Shining documentary. If you guys haven't seen my Shining documentary, please go and watch it. I made that a long time ago. I didn't just rip off Rob Ager. People think I was doing these movie analysis before Rob Ager had a channel. I'm not saying Rob Ager's a bad guy. I'm not saying he ripped me off. In fact, I cited Rob Ager in the video. That's not ripping people off. If you do research, if you write a paper, write a book, if you go to college, you will do what's called citing your sources. Okay, that's not ripping someone off. So I cite Rob in about 3 places in the book and a couple places in my Shining documentary. Now, I made that about 4 years ago. And I just decided that, I'll make it public because it was only for members. And, there's a vast archive of members' content at Jay's Analysis. Be sure to go subscribe. The link in the show description. Also, be sure and support our sponsor, Choq.com. That's CHOQ.com. And that's if you are looking for supplements in terms of losing your mojo. Right? They have hundreds of reviews. They will help you get your mojo back. Positive reviews. This is some good stuff. Chalk.com. The promotion code is JAY. You get a big discount if you put in JAY. JAY at Chalk.com. There's the link to that. Be sure and avail yourselves of that stuff. They're good supporters of a lot of alternative media content, a lot of red PILL based material. So we gotta support each other, support those guys, and they put out a good product to help you get your mojo back. Talking about some of that mushroom vitality, super mushroom vitality. They're talking about Mario. I'm talking about growing it like Super Mario, baby. You're going to be hanging out with some chicks. They're going to be like, what's that Luigi? I'm just joking, guys. I'm joking. Anyway, support the sponsors at Chalk.com. You can also, if you like this analysis, sign books at my shop of my books, Esoteric Hollywood 1 and 2, and also Jamie's books. You can get those there. All the copies are signed. Every day somebody says, why can't I get signed books anymore? You can. All of the books are signed. Every day somebody says, are the books at your website signed? Yes. All of them are signed. Jamie's books are signed as well. Be sure and go watch our previous show that we did on the first Kerth Barker book there, but where Jamie and I covered his book. Be sure and watch Madness in the Fast Lane. Watch the 60 Minutes documentaries. I wish I could find the 60 Minutes UK Parliament pedo stuff. That's a good documentary as well. If anybody can find that, watch that one. Watch the multiple personality documentaries. And then subscribe to Jason Analysis for the part 2, and we'll get deeper into trafficking and the reports that are coming out now, public reports. I don't have any insider info. This is all just public reports. And we'll be covering more on Dahmer. We'll be covering more on Manson, Polanski, Tate stuff in this part 2 that I didn't put in part 1. And let's do some super chats. We got quite a few here. Memophobe for $5. Keep up your excellent content, debate, and talk streams, Jay. It's greatly appreciated. You got it, dog. And now I got my Muslim hat on, so you can see that. Yes, I've converted. DC Customs $3. Dropping straight fire as always. When are we not dropping straight fire? Always, dog. Thank you, DC Customs. He says again for $2. Will you discuss Michael Aquino? Yes, that will be in the part 2 of not yesterday, 2 days ago's talk. So I did a Dahmer Aquino talk. You might think, what's the connection between Dahmer and Aquino? Well, if you didn't watch the Dahmer talk, you noticed that we showed a connection, tenuous but interesting and relevant nonetheless, between Process and Dahmer. Process Church and Dahmer, yes. And so that will, in a roundabout way, link to Aquino, especially if you've read Maury Terry's book, right? Maury Terry brings up Aquino. And we will also analyze pros and cons of the recent Netflix Sons of Sam series. I mean, all this stuff's coming out right now. And they just did a Gacy thing. They just did a Richard Ramirez thing. This is crazy. Rashad, $25. It's Felicia Rashad, dude. That's Bill Cosby's wife right there. Bill Cosby's wife, Felicia Rashad, has sent $25, and she wants to thank us for what we're doing. We understand you were having to drink feeble fobble zeeble zobble sauce that was dosing you, and so we're here to help. Thank you so much, Felicia Rashad. Jolene K, $10. Thank you, JD. Thank you, Jolene. Much appreciated. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Alex, $10. Why do you think Western elites are sabotaging the West? Because they don't care about geographical zones. They care about the end goal of the great work, which is to kill off much of the population and go transhumanist. You argue their global elite don't care. I think Anglo capitals would be safe in China, or else the West collapses. They'd be fleeced. It's not about money. It's about the top percent creating a new aeon, a new world. That's what it's about. It's not about money. So that they're not going to get fleeced because it's not about money. They print the money. But good question. Well, Emmanuel, $5. That's at the tip top. On the topic of things to avoid, may I also add trying to hammer truths into others, regardless of how accurate they could be. Who knew people like that? Wait, who knew people didn't like what I wanted to say? Haha, thank you as always. On the topic of things to avoid, add trying to hammer our truths into others. Well, are you hammering your truth into me about not hammering truths into others? I mean, I appreciate your $5, but I'm tempted to, that's a confusing phraseology here. Maybe I'm not reading your super chat right, but I'm just tempted to pre-sup that dog and be like, you're doing the very thing. But maybe I'm misunderstanding you. I don't know. Ultimate Boomer. I like that name. Is it possible to send you a book and how? I don't really accept books because people try to send weird stuff. People try to say, can I send you cookies? I'm not talking about our friend in Texas. I appreciate when he gives cookies. But other people were like, I'm not joking. One time somebody was like, can I mail you cookies? I'm like, hell no. You think I want cookies I'm going to eat cookies coming out of a P.O. box from random people? Can I knit you a hat? No, you cannot knit me a hat. You could knit me a hat, but I'm not going to receive a hat from you. I'm not joking. People try to send weird stuff. Now, I'm not calling you weird. You got a cool ass name, Ultimate Boomer. But sorry, not going to take cookies, and not even going to take books. Not because it nothing to do with you. It's just people try to send weird stuff, dude. I made a tamale. Could I mail it to you? I'm like, no, you cannot. But I made a tamale and a toboggan. I made a toboggan tamale. Why can't I mail it to you? And then they get mad. But no. I'm not even that famous, dude. I'm like legit C-level, B-level, E-celeb. And already as a C-B level, C+, B- E-celebrity, people want to mail you crazy things, dude. It's weird too. People want you to sign stuff. No boobies. I've never been asked to sign these boobies, baby. Actually been asked to sign some cool things. Been asked to sign David Lynch movies, David Lynch posters. I'm not joking. Been asked to sign other Tragedy and Hope. People would bring Tragedy and Hope and get me to sign it, which is, I mean, I'm cool with signing whatever. It's just you don't think about people bringing VHSs for you to sign. But I was like, that's pretty damn cool, I have to say. And then you get the people saying, I'd like to mail you a batch of cookies. No. Can I mail you a toboggan I knitted? No, that's okay. But thank you. Aaron, the big black dude, $5. What's up? He says, supporting all the smart MFers is going to run me broke. Well, hey, don't go broke. I feel like, no, I'm not going to say that. But hey, we appreciate that $5. Now, if $5 is going to send you broke, don't be super chatting. But I feel like you're joking because, $5 is not going to send you broke. Or you wouldn't be sending that money to old Tristana, right? And your boy Jay right here. But thank you so much. Giving hands receive blessings. Yes, they do. They definitely do. Thank you so much, Aaron, the big black dude. Eyes wide shut. That's an interesting name. What a handle. $5. I remember somebody on YouTube said, talking about QE2 and Philip. QE2. Quantitative easing 2. Prince Philip being addicts and going to Victoria, BC to recruit. Yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised. From now Lord Mountbatten. He was a notorious creep. Jersey Island creeps, right? And they had a serial killer on Jersey Island too, who was probably working with the creeps. And there was that story of that school. It's Jersey, right? Isn't that elite island off the UK? Is that right, guys? Remind me. It's getting late, so my mind's kind of mushing. Do I like cats? I like cats, but I can't have cats. I have cat allergies. Is it Jersey? Is that the island with the pedo murder creep stuff going on there too? The chat's always like 10 minutes behind. So not 10 minutes, 30 seconds. Are there any good sources on that kind of stuff with the royals? Honestly, go watch a lot of Sean Atwood's podcasts. I mean, he's been covering that pretty heavy in the last year. Yeah, Jersey. Cats are... yeah, go watch Sean's videos, because he's covered it the most that I can think of. But I'm sure there's some book somewhere. But that's a good question. Brittany Deshawn, $10. Deshawn. Sounds like a dish hitting a gong. Deshawn. And she sends $10. Thank you. Is human milk vegan? $25. Woo! You and Felicia Rashad are competing to have the top. We're going to give you both Cosby Awards tonight. Did you catch at Altion Childs' video? Somebody mentioned Altion Childs the other day. I don't know who Altion Childs is. Liberal Bricklaying Club. Who is Altion Childs? I'm sorry, I don't know. But maybe that was you the other day that said, did you watch Altion Childs? I don't know who that is. But I will make a note right now. Liberal Bricklaying. I'll have to go check that out. Thank you for that. Is Human Milk vegan? Trying to fight Felicia Rashad for the affection of Kill Bosby. General Neo, $10. My dad was in Nam. I don't know if he's ready for the Phoenix Program book. How do your folks respond to all this? I mean, some of my family members are in varying degrees receptive to the things that I talk about. I think they kind of just look at it like he's just an eccentric person, and you know, he does his thing and it's all kind of out there, but he's all right. But I mean, I don't know. Well, I don't know your dad, but I mean, I don't know that. I mean, most people weren't in the Phoenix Program, right? So it's not like all the soldiers who went to Vietnam were in the Phoenix Program, and if you give them the book, they're going to be traumatized, right? I don't think it was. I think it's a very small profiled selection of, you know, people who had proclivities for, you know, the dark triad for their personality profile, and then they would be taken into that kind of stuff. But I don't know how a Vietnam vet would handle that. But I mean, Valentine is a Vietnam vet, right? Douglas Valentine that wrote the book is a Vietnam vet. So I don't know. I mean, maybe send him an interview, right? Send him an interview that Douglas Valentine did. Ryan wins $5. I had a feminist screenwriting professor in grad school. I was talking about the creepy atmosphere of Rosemary's Baby. All of a sudden she got very emotional and insisted it's about a husband having power over her. That's what it's about. Well, see, that's what those people do, is when they major in their gender studies, then everything is that. Like, they can't read any narrative or any story. They'll go read the Bible. It's about that. They'll go read Shakespeare. It's about that. They watch Rosemary's Baby. It's about that. They play Mario Brothers. It's about that. Mario wants to put the princess into a bondage pose. I mean, literally, they get crazy. They're just nuts. Dan Man, $3. Can you talk about Paul McCartney and Billy Shears? I think it's possible. I don't know really much about the whole replacement conspiracy. Yes, I've heard the replacement conspiracy. Nothing like that is out of the domain of possibility. But I don't know enough about the Beatles conspiracies to comment on it. Sorry. I'm happy to listen to someone's Beatles conspiracy, but it's not one I've really taken that seriously. Anyway, thank you guys. If you want access to part 2, you can sign up at the website, Jay's Analysis, and you'll get part 2. In the next couple days, I will do the part 2 of Dahmer, part 2 of this one, and yes, I still owe the part 2 of the Icon talk. So good stuff, heavy stuff coming in the next few days. Been reading a lot.